Hi everyone, this is another video giving AS students an example response using the Poetry Comedy Anthology with AQA for the Aspects of Comedy course. As you may know, the anthology features 7 poems, which is designed to give students a snapshot of 7 different versions of comedy, I suppose. This video is aimed at AS students because the essay that I'm going to show you and the question is very much to do with AS. A-level are going to still be using the poems, but you have to use the poems differently. It's a different type of question. You won't get the poems with A-level, but you do with AS. So there are a number of differences. So in summary, if you're studying A-level, you would find this video useful just to see what to say about the poems. But for AS students, it's slightly more relevant because the essay itself is an essay for AS. And you can see what they're expecting from that level, so from year 12 or AS. So just a reminder of this question. For AS, you're given one poem to talk about in the question, and you have to choose your second yourself. Really important that you choose the correct poem for the question. I say to my students, as I've said in previous videos, that you've got 45 minutes. You can't talk about the world in that time. So I would always encourage students to talk about 2 poems rather than 5. So obviously be realistic about what you can do in the time. And it's important, of course, to always use the poem to answer the question. So they've given you a specific question, a specific task. You're using this poem to discuss that task. You're not just analysing the poems generally. So always analyse the poems through the lens of the question. You don't need to compare poems together. That's the same for A-level as well as AS. You don't need to write lengthy introductions or conclusions because it's hard to do them correctly in an exam and they can be time wasters. And also for AS, it's open book, so you get the poems in front of you, not annotated though, but for A-level you don't, so it's closed book for A-level. So there are slight differences between AS exams and A-level exams. So the task that we're looking at in this video is explore the view that the comedy poem is focused on serious issues, and the reason why serious issues is in red there is because that's the most important bit of the question, really. That's what you're talking about. So I would want students to repeat that phrase throughout their essay to show the exam that they're answering the question. They're telling you that you have to talk about Swift's Satirical Elegy, so that's you have to talk about that. But it's up to you to choose your second poem. And I think this was last year's question, actually. This was the AS question from last year. So it has already come up, this kind of question. So the second poem we're going to use is Prestatyn by Philip Larkin. And hopefully, if you know the poems well, you will know why that poem has been chosen as the second. So this video is about Swift's poem and Larkin's poem about serious issues. A reminder that the videos for all 7 poems are on my channel under I think it's the Anthology Comedy playlist, as well as some other essay videos as well for other questions. So let's have a look at the essay then. You can see the first 2 lines of the introduction, and then there's a big paragraph, half of the essay, which is about Satirical Elegy. So they're not trying to kind of merge the poems together in one paragraph, it's all in one place. So they say both Satirical Elegy and Prestatyn focus on serious issues, showing comedy's potential to ridicule and satirise controversial figures and topics using speakers who express ideas in an acerbic and critical manner. In Satirical Elegy by Swift, the speaker attacks the pride and vanity of the first Duke of Marlborough, John Churchill. The poem is written as a Juvenalian satire, which is a bitter and aggressive attack of the Duke's incompetence and greed, and reinforces how satire often focuses on those with wealth and influence and exposing incompetence from an elite. The iambic tetrameter and consistent use of rhyming couplets creates a non-stop attack full of vitriol and aggression as the speaker takes issue with the Duke's profit and pride. Accused of being a war profiteer who is kept in luxury while people were killed on the battlefield, the speaker ironically labels the Duke a mighty warrior, when actually the speaker is ridiculing the Duke's comfort. But the speaker goes further. Not only does the speaker suggest the Duke should have died sooner, 'twas time in conscience he should die, because he lived too long, he also says the Duke is going to endure eternal suffering. and damnation in hell. The last loud trump must wake him now. He left behind so much damage, so many widows and orphans, that no one will notice his hearse passing, meaning no one will mourn his loss, rendering the Duke as a burden who does not leave behind any glory or positive legacy. Words such as stink and dirt juxtaposed with the idea that the Duke won medals. The speaker at the end of the poem suggests that the Duke will return to dirt from whence he sprung, meaning he has no more value than dirt. In this poem, the foolishness of the Duke is shown through the incompetence, and Swift is ultimately making the point that a system of preferment does not work and puts the wrong people into power that can cause immense damage. This is at odds with the notion of a meritocracy. By having this view, Swift is also satirizing the literary form of an elegy, which is usually about celebrating the loss of someone held dear. Here, the opposite is true. Rather than memorializing the Duke's strengths, it is a place for Swift to attack the Duke and elite's flaws and shortcomings, which can have detrimental impacts on innocent people. So that's what they say about that poem. And then in the second half of the poem, they talk about Larkin's poem. In Sonny Prestatyn, Larkin uses a holiday poster advertising a seaside resort to present themes of sexual violation and violence, particularly from men to women. The poem begins with a utopian and exotic depiction of Prestatyn, as there is a hotel with palms and a hunk of coast, which is at odds with the realities of the resort. The girl on the poster is also described as innocent and beautiful, wearing a white swimsuit that fits tightly across her body to sexualize her pose and her body and appeal to the male gaze. As the poem moves from the first to the second stanza, the tone immediately shifts through the end-stop declarative "she was slapped up one day in March," which connotes the aggressive manner in which the poster was put up, but also has connotations of sexual violence and violation. This is reinforced through the colloquial way in which Larkin describes the poster's vandalism, where the once pretty and smiling girl is now snaggle-toothed and boss-eyed, has a tuberous cock and balls, and huge tits, which demonstrates that comedy does sometimes come from the crass and lewd depictions of the body. Towards the end of the poem, the poster of the girl is replaced with a poster about fighting cancer, which ends the poem rather bleakly and without hope or salvation. Not only is Larkin presenting the serious issue of women's treatment in his poem, but he is also satirizing consumerism and the world of advertising, which often presents visions of perfection which are at odds with reality. The men defacing the poster are rebelling against the false perfection and seem to take delight in mindlessly vandalizing the image of the girl, suggesting that there is a wider societal problem with the way men treat women. And they conclude by saying, as a result, both poems prove that serious issues are often present in comedic poems, and that comedy can sometimes focus on taboo and darker issues that may be offensive to some readers. And that's their essay. So again, you can see that it's quite blocky. They are separating the poems with a paragraph each, with a very short conclusion and intro either side. The most important thing, though, is they've picked the right second poem, because clearly Sonny Prestatyn is about serious issues, and they've also clearly answered the question. They haven't just gone off and talked about the poem. They've always kind of fastened the poem to the task quite clearly, so they're answering the question, and that's the golden rule in English Lit, is to always answer the question. Okay, so that is another example, I think a fourth example of an essay for the AS question for the poetry, which is paper 2, section A, prose and poetry paper. Make sure that you choose the right second poem and also explain the poem in confident and detailed way. Okay, so thank you for watching and good luck with the rest of your studies.